Richard Bugbee and I'm Luiseño, but I'm going to talk about Kumeyaay plants. My teacher was Kumeyaay, and actually I'll go through some of my teachers in this PowerPoint. I have a PowerPoint because I don't have any plants to show you right now, and I have some good pictures of plants. So, I guess I can tell you who I am. I used to work at the Museum of Man as the Indigenous Education Specialist. I was a director of the museum they were going to put out in Balboa, Indian Museum they were going to put in Balboa Park. And then I had a little exhibit at Southern Indian Health that was up for about 15 years. So this is on Kumeyaay medicinal plants. And these are some of my teachers that I had. I put LaHunt on there because some of them are passed away. And that's what we do when we talk about someone's passed away. So I'll talk about them first. My teacher was Jane Dumas. She was my teacher for about 35 years. I used to follow her around when she was talking about plants, and one time she goes, "Oh, you're in." Everybody would always gather around her and ask her a bunch of questions, and I just listened to what she had to say, and that was it. And so one day she came up to me and said, "Oh, you're interested in plants," probably after 2 years of listening to her. And she said, "Would you like to help me gather at my mom's gathering place?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And so then she taught me my first lesson. She asked me to dig up this, it's called Bithai. Bithai in Kumeyaay is white sage. And she asked me to dig up this white sage, but it was grown in the parking lot at Steel Bridge over by Hamishaw Boulevard Road, or wherever it is. And there was a bunch of kids underneath the bridge. I don't know what they were doing, but there was a bunch of kids, teenagers there. And so she told me that before I dug up the plant that I was supposed to say a prayer to the plant, ask the plant permission, and to tell the plant what I was going to do with it, give it an intent to the plant. And so when I got done talking to the plant, I looked up and all the kids had left because they probably saw some crazy guy talking to plants. And so I did that. And so later on I found out you don't have to do that all out loud. You can just kind of do it, talk to the plant that way. So that was my first lesson. And then I became the watchdog while she would gather. So I had to watch for rangers and stuff while this elder lady would go gather acorns or whatever she needed to gather. And then later on, as she got older, she became the watchdog and I became the gatherer. And sometimes the plants, most of the time they give you permission, especially if you know what time of year or what time of the month to gather plants. But sometimes they say no. And I saw some really nice juncus one time, and I said, "Oh, maybe we could get some juncus for my teacher." So I walked over to the juncus and did all the prayers and the permission and the intent, and I reached down and the juncus went right into my arm. So I pulled out and I went back to my truck and I told my teacher, I said, "The plant said no." And so we drove off and she didn't care. So that's it. So that's Jane Dumas, and she's from Humul, and I later learned the language from her. Her and her brother paid off. Then there's Uncle Henry Rodriguez. He's Luiseño from La Jolla. He taught me Luiseño and a bunch of Luiseño plants and mostly language. And then John Peters on the upper right is my grandfather, and he taught me since I was born. And he used to kidnap me and take me to the desert. And he'd spend a couple of weeks out in the desert living out. And he showed me how to make fire and do shelters and different things like that. And he was actually an old cowboy. He's in a suit in there, but I've never seen him in a suit. He was always a cowboy riding with he's a movie actor from the Cisco Kid, Leo Carrillo, has a state park named after, beach named after. Anyway, I found out they're cousins. Vivian Hailstone, who's Hoopa. Oh, my grandfather's Luciano, from San Luis Rey. Vivian Hailstone is a Hoopa, and she's a basket weaver. And I used to sit on the California State Parks Native American Advisory Council until they dissolved it. But me and Vivian are the ones that developed the gathering permit for basket weavers to go gather materials in state parks to make baskets. On the right-hand side is Theodora Cuero. After I learned Kumeyaay, I learned from Theodora. I actually found out that if I asked her in English, which she didn't understand, if I asked her in my broken Spanish, she would not really give me answers. But once I learned Kumeyaay and asked her in Kumeyaay, she would give me really cool answers. Like a lot of times she's holding what we call romer, it's something they call it wild rosemary, woolly blue curls. So I asked her in Kumeyaay what it was for, and she said, "Oh, you take a bath and then no man can resist you." So, but that's a long story. Anna Sandoval, in the middle there, in the lower middle, she was I used to hang out with Jane used to hang out with her, so I hung out with her, and she taught me a lot about the Kumeyaay culture. She was a leader at Sequan for many, many years. Mary Sanchez, who's Erica Pinto's grandmother. She taught me a lot. She was in a time where the bird singers only men sang. She used to sing, and no one said anything because she used to come over to my house when I lived in El Cajon and sing songs for us. And she's the one that I had some white sage one time, and she goes, "Oh, that's a very special plant." So I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna get some really good wisdom out of this." So, what's so special about it? "Oh, it's just such a special plant." And you just went back and forth about what's so special about. "Oh, it's just a special plant." And I thought you'd talk about how what the smoke does, or what the tea does, or something. She goes, "Oh, that was our toilet paper." She goes, "It's soft and it smells good." And I go, "Yeah, it's antibacterial too." I mean, we can use. Yeah. So she was a wise lady, and she was considered a spiritual leader down here. And then we have 3 people that are still alive. We got Julia Parker, who's works in Yosemite, and she taught me a lot about twisting cordage out of dog bane. And then I have these 2 young people on the bottom corners. I have them on the opposite corners because they don't like each other, but they're okay. But there's El Frank, who's Tongva from LA, and she taught me how to make plank canoes, and we work on the language a lot, the Lusano language. And then Stan Rodriguez, everybody knows who Stan is, and I've known Stan for many, many years, and he's really brought the Kumeyaay language back. And the numbers were dwindling really, really small Now they're growing because of Stan, him teaching the language everywhere. I guess he's not, I should put a doctor in front of that now, huh? Because he's I call him the Kustiaites. And then my Paula kid's looking over the hill, and that's a logo that we used to have on Kumei.com. I used to be the news editor for Kumei.com. Okay. This is, we're not going to look at this. This is plant formulas, and you don't need to know this unless you want to go take a course at Kumei Community College and take up no botany. Kumei no botany, but so this is creosote bush. It's FC. I get that mixed up with Ipshi. FC is creosote bush. Ipsi is greasewood. This is a plant that's very potent. You have to use it in very small doses. It's good from everything from cancer to athlete's foot. You know? it's used for a lot of different things. It's what smells so good in the desert after rain. It's actually probably 90% of the plants in the desert. You can see the ring on the bottom. That's king clone. That it says 11,700 years old. So it's the oldest plant, but it kind of cheats. It clones itself. So it's an important plant, and then in the health food stores, it's known as chaparral because they don't like I guess creosote has a bad rap. I guess it's the stuff you paint telephone poles that keep bugs out of it. So it has another thing. Just like they sell canola oil. There's no plant canola. The plant canola oil comes from is rape. And they don't want to call it rapeseed oil. So they call it canola oil because it comes from, most of it's grown in Canada. So it's marketing. So the teas and the flowers are for a blood purifier, and the problem is it works so good that if you start taking the bad stuff out and it runs out of bad stuff, it starts taking the good stuff out. So like I said, it helps with the flu, arthritis, cancer, and again, just a small amount for a cup of tea. And then the old stuff, we put it in, the old leaves, we put it in our shoes for odor eaters. But when me and Jane used to go out and talk about plants, we used to have a jar of creosote. And we had that jar for like at least 25 years. And when we opened it, looked brown and stuff, but when we opened it, it smelled just like the day we got it. It just kept that medicine smell. And that's one of the things in botany, everything is, so with that floral formula, everything is divided by that floral formula. Every plant that has a calyx of 5, a corolla of 5, anthers of 5 plus 5, and a closed up ovary with 5 carpels in there. And so every plant that has that belongs in this family. And we smell it. Does it smell like medicine? Or is it tender? Is it edible? We have this see it, smell it, use our senses and hear about what we learned about it, and then sometimes taste it. Okay, Pelite, no, this die. In Kumei, LLY is just a letter by itself. It's die. So there's no English letters that really fit it. And it's white sage, Salvia apiana. Salvia is Apiana means bee, so it means bee sage. And if you look at it, it has a perfect landing pad for the bee, and then it has two anthers that hit the bee in the back and knock pollen on there. You can see the anthers sticking out. Those are and then the landing pad on each flower. And leaves are burned to remove negativity. Not just white sage, Cleveland sage is used, and basin sage basin sagebrush is used, and also mugwort, which is another sagebrush, is used. Leaves in teas for colds, mucus, get rid of mucuses, improve circulation, and it's a blood purifier too. And we'll see this plant again on for diabetes. And this dye should not be ingested by pregnant and nursing women because it's so good at getting rid of mucuses that nursing and pregnant women don't want that. So you can the smoke but can't drink the tea. Yeah, what are these? Oh, that's what, these plants are from my yard, except for this one is at Satwewa in Ventura, which they chopped all these plants down because they said it was a fire hazard. Kind of ranges, I thought was higher. We saved a lot of them. Saved the deer grass, and I planted it in my yard in Topanga. And it's really weird because I had a little wolf at the time, and he really mangled a couple of the deer grasses, and I thought, oh, he killed them. Well, all the rest of the deer grasses died except for the ones he mangled, and the ones he mangled just bursted out. So much for that there. Obsidian, chia, salvia, columbari. It's a high energy food, enough teaspoons, enough energy to hike in a day. It makes the best. Put it in cold lemonade. It turns the lemonade almost into a Slurpee, but you get all the nutrients from the chia. And when I used to go to schools and talk about kumai culture and stuff, and I'd always get my chia seeds, and I always get to them, and they'd always be gone. The baggie be empty, or the jar be empty. I couldn't figure out where my chia seeds going. Well, I have 3 daughters close in age, and they were stealing my chia seeds for diet food. And I said, well, that's better than anything else. Go ahead and steal it. Yeah. Oh, another thing too. We'll go back to the creosote. When my kids used to get sick, I used to make them creosote tea, but they hated it. So even though I think it tastes good, and they hated it. So every time they get sick, I go, oh, I'll make you some tea. Oh, I feel better, Dad. I'll go to school. And they would, so creosote cured my kids of every illness known, just because they didn't want to take it. So it makes the best lemonade. It's also, you can make a really cool candy with it. It's called chia candy. There's a group of people up in LA called the Chia Cafe, and they have the recipe out for to make the chia candy. Actually, he's not calling it chia candy, he's calling them chia power bars now because you don't want to call it candy. Anyway, it relieves the effect of rheumatism and arthritis. I know an elder lady that drinks a teaspoon of chia with water every morning just for her arthritis. And in the old days, they used to make a poultice of chia seeds for bullet wounds, so it's pretty powerful stuff. Oh, and chia too is getting shorter. What's happened is chia's had at least 10,000 years of Indian people gathering it. So when they gather it, they use seed beaters in a basket, and they beat the seed heads, and the seeds fall in the basket. So they get sloppy, and then some bounce out. And so, but they're hitting the tall parts of the plant. So replanted are the tall parts of the plant, and so what's left is the short ones. Well, the short ones are birdseed. Well, now we're not gathering it. It's the birdseed, the top parts, the top plants, and what's left is the short ones. So the short ones drop off, regenerate, and so the plant is getting shorter and shorter. Where chia used to be this tall, now it's about this tall. And that's because that's just some 500 years of not being able to gather, or even less. I don't know, I have a picture in here, but I have a picture of 7 Indian Kumeyaay women that had it's from 1892, and their ages, the youngest one's 105 and the oldest one's 128. And there's a lady standing upright with her hands on her hips is 112. And that's because those ladies ate traditional foods. I don't know if I have it right here. Probably. No, I don't. Elder kupak, or kupak sometimes. Elderberry. And if you can see, this is one of the coolest elderberry trees, on the lower right, and people might recognize it, but that's from Viejas. And when they went to Viejas Valley there, that was like one of the only trees growing there. And it's so old, and it has as you can see, it has the best elderberries. The flowers and the berries are from that tree. I think they're all from that tree. And the flowers are, I think maybe I have it on this side, yeah. The blossoms are for fever relief for babies. And those are one of the few plants you can gather because they keep really well in a jar. A lot of people are kind of get strange about elderberry because most of the parts of the plants of the elderberry are toxic or make you sick. The green berries will really make you sick, but the ripe berries are just fine. And the blossoms are benign. We use them for berries. The berries, actually, when you drink the juice from the berries, it acts as a blood thinner. We found that out when people were drinking elderberry, they were getting blood thinners like Coumadin and stuff like that, and they're touching their skin and they're starting to bleed. And so we put out a little Indian Health Council at Morongo. Is that what's at Morongo? I think so. We made up we went around and asked all the people that use native plants, what they used them for and stuff. And we made a little booklet because we had these plants analyzed at Loma Linda University for their chemical properties. And so doctors can say if they're prescribing Coumadin, they can ask, are you using elderberry? And they either say, don't use the elderberry, or I'll cut back on the Coumadin one, so they're not using the things together. So we got the flowers and the berries, and the white stuff on the berries, because the berries are actually purple, is yeast. And you can actually wash that yeast off, and I think that's what they make elderberry wine. You use that as the agent. Yeah, I know people that make different things, but us Indians, we couldn't wait to make things that ferment. Same with coffee. Hamuzi, mule fat. The leaves are used. You make a poultice from the leaves, and you kind of just squish them up, and you put them on swellings, and they bring swellings down. There's male and female, and it really works really well. And nowadays, that's the material we use to make arrows. We used to make arrows out of giant ricane, but now we use mule fat, or hamuzi. And it's called Bacchus, salicifolia, there's a lot of Bacchuses. There's Bacchus is coyote bush, boombrackers. Anyway, salicifolia means salix is willow, folia means leaves. So it means the leaves look like willow, and they kind of do look like willow. Bichat, Yerba Santa. There's the two different, the plant in the middle there, that's the trichocalyx, and the fuzzy one is a crassifolium. And it's kind of weird because the shiny leaf one's called the woolly Yerba Santa, and the woolly one's not. And anyway, I couldn't figure out why they're both Yerba Santa. And the reason is their flowers are the same. I guess it's all about the flowers. So the flowers and the leaves are used that have to do with your lungs and your chest, like asthma. It's used as tea or smoked, and on the sticky leaf one, you can use it as a band-aid. The trichocalyx is you only find that one on the mountains. The fuzzy leaf one is down by the coast here. Harui, or quist, is Yerba Manza, and the rhizome and the leaves are used to relieve ailments of the throat. Sometimes you can chew it. I kind of like their flowers. I don't know. And you can see the red rhizomes. That's the parts we use. And it always grows by water. It has to have water. This is a verbena too. I think this bottom one is Mission Trails, and the one on the right is Piedras Pintadas, where I had my kids' puberty ceremony. What did you treasure? 5 minutes, okie dokie. Hakwahara, Conchalawa. This is a plant used to cure the illness by mosquitoes, like malaria. I love the color of this plant. Jane's husband was in the military. It was in World War II, and he caught malaria. And he had a malaria attack with Jane's mom, who was actually a great healer down here. And when he was having a malaria attack, she asked Jane, "What's wrong with your husband? Is he drunk?" And she goes, "No, he has malaria." And so she goes, "What's malaria?" She says, "Malaria is an illness caused by a mosquito." And so she gathered a bunch of this Conchalawa, made him drink a bunch of tea, and he never had another malaria attack for the next 30 years. So it's kind of cool. And this year it's really come out because of the rains. Oh, there's Theodore with her woolly blue curls. Yeah. And here's the woolly blue curls. Hahanamur. Anyway, that's these are women's plants. Take a bath in the woolly blue curls, no man can resist you. And then the California sagebrush, which I used to tell my kids my girls that was Indian perfume. It's kuchash, and quash is the laurel sumac, which I used to call taco plant. But these are all used in the women's puberty ceremony. Plants for poisonous bites, matyu, quapaha. Matyu is the ones with the white dots. This is means earth eye. That's actually a big picture because the plant is only that big. And daughter, witch's hair or whatever you want to call it. And haquapaha means lizard guts. Diabetes, ipa, and inhibits the production of sugars. So if you were to have a pie, which is nopales or nopalitos, and mix them with scrambled eggs in the morning, it would control your sugar. You wouldn't get a sugar spike, even from eating carbohydrates or nothing. But stimulates the blood to the extremities. I notice when I drink it, it makes my fingertips tingle. Mosh, which is agave, where you get the agave sugar. Be careful with agave sugar because it's not always organic. And chopi, which is telegraph weed, which is the plant I was going to bring in, I'm holding right there. You make a tea, and while it's still warm, before it cools down, you put it on a sore that won't go away. And the old cowboys used to use it for saddle sores. My teacher used to use it for sores on dogs that wouldn't go away, but it works on humans too. Oh, my thing just went for me. Ceremonial plants, pusi, which is the Jimson weed, which is tobacco. You notice our tobacco has white flowers. That's actually tapa, which is coyote tobacco. Salvia royale, which I don't know the Indian name, which is a type of sage that we use for cleansing. Kapao, which is the basing sagebrush, which is the upper middle. And kupar, which is the elderberry, which is no picture of. Food is meant acorns. Kupar, which is a black oak, senyao, live oak. Acorns were used because our main food was wild meat, and there's no fat in wild meat. And acorns are high in fat, but it has a really good fat in it. So it was a food supplement. And we talked about the mock and the chia and the prickly pear already. So gather with respect, offer a prayer, ask permission, tell the plant's intent, tell the plant what you need it for. Teacher says, Mahashawu Dibayamant, I'm quite sure. The Creator watches over us all and takes care of the land and the